I felt angry, I felt violated. When were these restrictions going to end? And they didn't seem like they were coming. So
you were faced with not just your business gone. I guess that would mean your property's gone, your son's job would be gone.
Yeah. We find out afterwards that the government of Canada or the provinces actually were turning off the cameras on the highway. The government was starting the hate speech about us. They took innocent, blue-collar Canadians that just wanted to have their freedom back again. We'd said it all along that a conversation would have been perfect, and his intent was to use law enforcement as a weapon and beat, innocent protesters. We had bouncy castles. Anybody that took place in the protests in Ottawa felt alive again. They felt rejuvenated. They felt like they weren't alone, and that's why you've seen so many people come to Ottawa to stand and fight for their right to protest.
Information covered up, censorship, corruption. The mainstream media have proven itself to be untrustworthy. I'm here to give a platform for debate, for truth, for open discussion. I'm introducing you to my podcast, Silenced with Tommy Robinson.
Who exactly is Tommy Robinson, or Stephen Yaxley-Lennon?
With the English Defence League, the EDL.
Robinson has alarmed rap sheet.
The problem is with Islamic
The
integration.
English far-right Islamophobic activists.
Since then, there's been organised protests across the country in London, Manchester, Leeds. People in their thousands are marching for Robinson's cause.
There is no such thing in this country as a Muslim.
Free Tommy Robinson!
Welcome to my latest edition of my podcast, Silenced. I'm in Canada. When I think of Canada now, I think of the trucker convoy. I think of the moment that broke COVID's back. I get the opportunity now to sit down with Chris Barber, the man that first organised that, and with the Big Red, with Big Red led that truck convoy. So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me, Tommy.
Your convoy become world famous, Chris. But I'd like to start just to understand who you are. I know you was just an ordinary trucker, but where was you born?
I was born in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, southwest corner of the province. Farm raised, mother and father, strong family, 2 siblings. We were born and raised around supper tables, eating meals together and having conversations like what normal families did in the 80s and 90s. The same thing, it just matured into a trucking business off of the family farm, which we've been a part of we homesteaded here, my great-grandfather homesteaded here in 1905 on the same property that I live on today.
So your grandfather come here, then your mum and dad lived there and you live in there now?
Yes.
And did you say you were homeschooled then?
I was not, no, I was raised up in a small little village north of Swift Current of about 200 people.
200 people in the village?
Yes.
What's it like growing up somewhere like that? Boring, I guess.
Small town. We lived 2 miles outside of the village of that town. So bike riding into school in the mornings, small, close-knit families, neighbors that are still, neighbors per se. It's a community that you want to be part of as a family.
Everyone knew everyone?
Everyone knew everyone. And
everyone looked down for everyone?
Yeah.
And you had two brothers, 2 sisters?
I've got a brother and I've got a sister.
Older, younger, was you the oldest?
I am the oldest, sister's second by 2 years, and my brother's by 4.
You're a big old lad as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
You're a bit, how tall are you?
6'4".
Is that from mum and dad?
Yeah, I don't know where I get my height from. My father's tall, but not as tall as I. And nobody's quite as stocky as I am, so.
Makes you a lump.
Yeah, my mum is, yeah.
When you come out of school, what did you do? How did you get in any trouble growing up?
I did a little bit, nothing really too law enforcement worthy. Just your typical, teenage running around and being a nuisance. Out of high school, I jumped right into my career, went for my Class 1A license is what they call it in Canada, which is your commercial vehicle with air brake endorsement. So from 18 years, I started driving commercial vehicle. I've been driving for just over 30 years now.
Why did you want to do that when you left school? What was your push towards that? Was that the only option, or was that something you was passionate about? Born
and raised in a farming family. So we had a gravel company came to our yard and hauled some scrap, some garbage away once, and I got the privilege to ride in the passenger seat of a semi. And from that moment on, I think I was probably 10 or 11 years old at that time. My mother said that I was infatuated with semis from that moment forward. So
what was a semi? That's a big massive
semi, yeah, lorry,
okay.
How you say it in Europe.
Yeah.
So got my license, was a company driver, ran, and when 21 years of age, you're allowed to cross the international border into the United States. And as soon as I was 21, I was trucking to Texas, all over North America. and I've been doing that now for quite some years. In 2006, I started my own business. We specialize in agriculture hauling equipment from the factories in the United States. Your John Deere's, your Case, your AGCO. We bring the new equipment to Canada. We then, the dealerships will then pre-trip it, get it ready for the farms. We will take that equipment to the farms, bring the trades back, sell the trades. It's a big system. So.
How long are those journeys that you're going on? How long are you on the road for?
We can usually be gone for 4 to 5 days with my company. We're pretty select. We're a dedicated carrier. We only do specialized equipment. So my guys are usually gone on a Monday and home on the Fridays. So.
When you say your guys, is that you as well? Is that the life you live? You're on the road for 5 days out of 7 yourself?
Yes, yeah,
So
commonly, yeah. My life has kind of changed a little bit in the last number of years here. So I've got 5 other guys that work under me. My son and I own the company now. So my son looks after it while his dad's traipsing around the country trying to do what we're doing.
How many kids you got?
I've got 2 children. I got a 21-year-old boy, Jonathan, and a 19-year-old daughter, Sierra.
What, and Jonathan's in the business, in the
He
family
is,
business?
yeah. He got his license when he was 18 years old, and he's been working with me ever since. So
Oh wow.
he's a good kid.
You enjoy having him working with you?
Very much so. His energy is high pace. He's mechanically inclined to fix just about anything there is to fix, and it's like a rivalry now to see who can haul the bigger loads, his dad or him. So.
How has it been on the road as a family man like that, when you had 2 young kids? How is it as a father working away for 5 days at a time?
The kids did really well growing up. I've got a strong family unit at home. When you're home, you were with the kids. I've got 2 amazing children raised. They're good kids. They're good, hard-working ethics and focused on family. I couldn't be prouder than my children. So.
And their mum? When did you meet her?
Mother, split family now. We divorced about 15 years ago. So Stephanie is a school teacher in the local system back home. And still involved. We've co-parented our children quite well.
You still remain close?
Oh yeah.
Good.
We have a good close family. We've raised our children. Priority number 1 was to make sure our children knew that they were loved, and that's something we've always focused on. So.
That's good. Okay, so let's get on to you're just running your family business. Your kids are growing up. They're involved in the business. What happens that changes your life? What's the moment that changes it?
Well, COVID hit in, I believe it was 2019, and I stayed working. I didn't take any time off. Demand for trucking was pretty large, so I spent those days on the road. I remember driving down the highway in Saskatchewan with not a single vehicle on the highway. The trucking industry stayed, and we were essentially heroes, to keep the country moving while everybody was at home. I remember standing in drive-through lineups with vehicles, because you can take a semi through a drive-through lineup. So you would have to walk through the drive-through lineup with the passenger cars to get a coffee or a bite to eat, seeing as the bathrooms were closed, restaurants were closed for a time in Canada. Our lockdowns were pretty severe, as most people know. We then entered a phase in the province of Saskatchewan, where I live. Premier Scott Moe had announced that we would not be taking part in a COVID vaccine passport in any way, and it was just funny that the province of Alberta did the exact same thing under Jason Kenney. And
the problems are about so they wouldn't either.
They weren't going to take part in the vaccine, the COVID vaccine passport.
So the government was saying you're going to need a passport to travel, and these 2 provinces were saying no.
They were saying no. And it seemed like a short visit. The Prime Minister flew and had a meeting with both of these premiers, and it was shortly after that they both announced that the provinces would be joining the digital passport. And that was one of the last straws for me. That took place in Saskatchewan, October 1st of 2021. So enraged, I think I yelled at the steering wheel and the windshield more than I did anything else. I felt angry, I felt violated. When were these restrictions going to end? And they didn't seem like they were coming. So in the fall of 2021, the government announced that January 15th, 2022, they would implement a cross-border mandate for commercial vehicles crossing the border into the United States. We would have to be fully vaccinated to do that. And I remember waiting right to the last minute at the end of December in 2021, and then realizing that I'd spent the better part of 20 years running my own company and keeping those large carriers away from my customer base, and the government was basically handing them over, on my behalf, because I wouldn't be able to cross that border anymore. So reluctantly, I got my shots in the end of 2021, became vaccinated to comply.
What would it mean? If you hadn't got your shots, What would it meant for your livelihood, for your life?
My business would have done.
Your business would have gone.
Yeah, I make a living off of hauling equipment out of the United States into Canada.
So you were faced with not just your business going. I guess that would mean your property's gone. Your son's job would be gone.
Yeah,
So that's what you're looking at.
it was so.
That was your option.
That was my option, unfortunately, and the government put us in such a position. My son was the only one that didn't have to adhere to the rules. He worked. He lost his job actually due to vaccine mandates. His employer, requested him become vaccinated, and at that time I said no. He was working for another person. It wasn't working for me full time at that time. So when that happened, I'd said, now it's time to come home and help me with the business. You don't have to be vaccinated to be here. And so therefore he then came on full bore. So my daughter, peer pressure in the high school forced her to get her vaccine.
At what age?
Would have been 17 at that time.
She had 1 or 2 shots.
She had 2 shots, and she has had a significant amount of issues with her female reproduction organs ever since. So she's not married or anything yet. So I'm hoping and praying that things go properly before that. So. My wife.
You're concerned now that from the shots she might not be able to have babies.
That would be a
Is that your
concern.
concern?
Yes. Yeah.
Your wife?
My wife worked in the school system, so she was forced to take the vaccine to keep her job as well. So it was a mandate. The government pushed this on everybody.
But now they're saying they didn't, right?
Yeah.
They're now trying to act like they didn't. So as you said, you were forced to get it. Your daughter was forced to get it. Your ex-wife was forced to get it.
My current wife, she works in the school system as well.
Your current wife does well, okay.
So, January 7th, I did a social media post. I was in the
January
States.
7th, what year?
2022.
At the height of COVID?
On the 17th, so approximately 8 days before the mandate for commercial vehicles I faced with a lot of the drivers that I worked with in the industry were leaving the industry. They weren't going to be crossing the border anymore. They were going to be staying at home. They were going to be working around home. It put a lot of extra pressure on us for the people that were crossing the borders. We were losing a significant amount of drivers that were crossing that border. So we did a social media post. I was angry. I remember looking at the video now. I used the full colorful words, and it was pretty irritating.
And what happened with that video? I'm guessing it went viral.
That video went viral, and it was basically the start of what
How
was. Oh, I don't even know what the numbers were on it.
So I'm guessing it was an angry, passionate rant.
It was
about COVID forced vaccination of truck drivers crossing borders.
Yes, yeah. It was to do with like, when is this going to end? We need to stand up. I'm calling a call to action per se. The initial idea was then to protest with our commercial vehicles at our local legislative grounds in our home provinces. It was a little while later in the planning stages of the convoy itself that we decided that we were going to merge with another couple groups that were already planning on going to Ottawa for a mini protest, and it just evolved from there. So a whole pile of people came together. There was a need for it. People wanted it. People were tired of the mandates in Canada, and then the planning started from there. And it was approximately a week later, Miss Tamara Leach called me out of the blue, and I've never spoke to Tamara in my life. I didn't know who she was. And she said that I'm here to help if you need some help, and it was born from there. 2 weeks after that point, I was picking her up in Red Cliff, Alberta, and we were on our way to Ottawa, 3,000 kilometers.
Wow, all the coming together of those people, how did that grow? So you said you're speaking to people in other groups. Was that through different social medias? Did you set the social medias up? Was it Tamara? How did you grow from you making an original, right, we need to do this, I'm upset. How does it then grow into?
Started with a few people having a conversation on social media to the video going viral, and then finding out that there was a network of people all across the country that felt the same way and had enough of the government mandates and didn't know when the mandates were going to quit. So it was a collective group of people that just decided to come together from nowhere. I had met so many people that were so passionate and fighting for years before that. And here I was yelling at the steering wheel for a few years before that, not knowing that there was a group of people out here that we could actually make a difference for.
So then you started driving after 2 weeks?
We did January 24th, 2022. We left.
What do you say to your wife at this time?
Oh boy, I left the yard at 6 o'clock in the morning that morning. I said, I hope to make you proud, honey. And she said, you already did. So she did a social media post up that went a little viral there of me leaving a dark, wintry morning at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So your wife videoed you leaving?
Leaving in the yard, yes, she did.
What did she say anything on camera?
No, she just videoed the truck leaving the yard and just what she wrote there. Pardon me?
Your truck's quite iconic to see.
It is, yeah. When it's dark and big red's rolling down the highway, it's lit up pretty nice. It's been 20 years of work on that truck. I've been kind of slowly fixing it up over the years, and it's a pride. It's my baby.
Yeah. Okay, so you've left. Talk me through the story.
Well, we didn't know who was going to be involved in it. We didn't know if we were going to have any community support. We had no idea what we were coming. We had a lot of people on social media that were talking about it, of course, in my hometown of Swift Current, Saskatchewan. The deal was to meet at 7 o'clock in the morning at one of the fuel stations, and so coming around the corner at that time in the morning, I was, you come around the corner and you see this whole parking lot full of cab lights, clearance lights, and just, it was a cold morning, of course. It was minus 20 or minus 30 degrees.
Wow.
And the parking lot was full, overwhelming response.
When you say full, how many cars? Is that hundreds?
In my little town, there must have been 50 vehicles.
Okay.
50 commercial vehicles. And our plan was then to convoy to the opposite way from Ottawa to Medicine Hat, Alberta, to pick up the West convoy and to pick up Tamara, or to meet Tamara there for the first time. Just 2 weeks into the planning, I'd never met Tamara. Still just speaking to her on the phone. So I was quite surprised to see how short she is and how tall I am. And a friendship was born from there. We then started our Facebook Lives and conversation. My son Jonathan joined us in the truck. So we.
Jonathan, your son went with you?
Yes. Yeah, he was with us the entire time.
Okay. So as you're on your convoy, as you're heading, do you have any idea how big it is? What's about to happen? Do you have your finger on the pulse of the country at the time?
Yeah, I mean, when we left Red Cliff, Alberta that morning, when we had Tamara in the truck, it really the first thing that hit me was we had police traffic control at every intersection, making sure the intersection was closed for when we went through. The parking lot in Red Cliff, Alberta was packed. There was a lot of people there, media as well as trucks. And then you've seen the other convoys coming in from the southern Alberta, in central Alberta. And the biggest thing that we've seen was like the streets are filling in the city of Alberta, Medicine Hat, Alberta, just a suburb of Red Cliff. And it was evident from that moment on that we were onto something, of course, because the highways in rural Alberta, rural Saskatchewan and Manitoba, it's very desolate in certain parts. There's not a lot of houses on the side of the highway. You can go 50, 60 kilometers without seeing a house, just prairie. And the entire journey from the west to the east was full of people adorning the highways or the ditches at all hours of the day and all hours of the night. In the frigid temperatures of the Canadian winter, minus 20, minus 30, people would be standing there with their kids. There was a lot of kids and flags and trucker signs and just freedom and yeah.
So you've lit something up.
We did. I think the convoy at its length was approximately 50 miles at one point. I've got pictures of it from an aerial photo that you can't see the end of the lights behind us en route.
And as this is going on, are the news, are the media agencies letting the public know the size of this?
No, we find out afterwards that the government of Canada or the provinces actually were turning off the cameras on the highway maps, the 501 highway maps here, so people couldn't see the length of the convoy.
So you have cameras that people can see live?
We do, yeah. You can log.
Oh, you can log on and look live, and they were turning them off
They were turning them off.
So that the public are not aware of this huge gathering that's happening.
And it wasn't long after that the media came after us ferociously, discrediting us with everything. And of course, in Canada, the media gets its direction from the federal government, of course. So the government was starting the hate speech about us. They took innocent, blue-collar Canadians that just wanted to have their freedom back again, and tried to demoralize them.
One of us, what they said about you.
Pardon me?
What did they say about you?
Well, they said just about everything.
Personal attacks.
I fit the criteria for being a white supremacist, a racist, or whatever. What did they call us? there was a lot of names. The Prime Minister used a lot of divisive rhetoric. One of the best terms that he used on us was that we were part of a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. And we took that term and we actually used it for a positive. We've named some of our groups like the small fringe minority in Canada. So we took everything that they said, we turned on them and proved wrong.
What was it like as a business owner? You're a business owner at that time, when the media onslaught was starting against you. Was you concerned about the future of your business, your livelihood in those early days, or was it something that progressed?
You know, my business was going to be done regardless.
With the mandates?
With the mandates.
Okay.
So I've been very fortunate. My customer base is all very supportive. My customers are all rural farmers. You know, a lot of them are extremely loyal. And they've seen the true intent of the convoy, and they've seen exactly what the government tried to do to make us, or to demonize us, I guess.
Okay, so as the convoy is heading, you're seeing people everywhere. How does it develop?
How did it develop?
When you get into the city, where are you heading to?
We were heading to Ottawa, and that was our goal.
How long does that take?
We left on the 24th of January. We arrived on the 29th. So we had police escorts the majority of the way across the country. Law enforcement worked with us extremely well. In the province of Ontario, the local detachments there called the Ontario Provincial Police actually met us at the Manitoba-Ontario border and gave us an escort right through the entire province. Ontario is a very vast province. It's approximately, I believe it took us 3 days to get through Ontario just alone. So every city we had a different liaison. We were in constant communication with law enforcement all the way across the country.
So you liaised, so you contacted the police and you liaised for this convoy the whole way there?
We did. Safety was the priority. That was the utmost. You can't put that many miles of traffic together in a line and not expect any. We didn't have any trouble. There was no fender benders, no accidents. And I believe that was solely because we did what we could to make sure that the safety of the people was number one. And in some of the cities we came through, it was wall-to-wall people standing on the side of the street. So we had to be very conscious of
speeds.
And we're in big semis, big trucks. And that was the thing. Ottawa was we were led right to Wellington Street. We're right in front of the Parliament. When we were led there by law enforcement, they parked us. They stopped us right where we sat.
So in your eyes, at the time of organising this, you're organising a convoy legally, peacefully, safely to make your protest against the mandates.
Yes, 100%.
What changes there? Because from what the media reported, what they wanted to tell the public was a very different picture.
It was. The government, used the media to try and, vilify us. Make it sound like we were these horrible people. Meanwhile, the government wouldn't. Our main goal and purpose was to have a conversation with our sitting government, and that was never an option when it came to what the government's intent was.
So the government wouldn't talk to you?
They wouldn't talk to us.
There was no negotiation?
To this day, we never had a conversation with anybody from the federal government.
Still to this day?
To this day.
So you're going there, you're brought into the city, thousands are protesting. What changes? How long are you there? What's the police reception like? Is it friendly? Is it kind? Are they working with you? Are they happy with you?
They were.
And is there a change in that mood or atmosphere at any time?
There was. Law enforcement worked with us right through the entire protest. Law enforcement, we were open and honest with everything that we did right from the start. All we wanted was a conversation with our government. The only thing we heard from Canadian citizens the entire distance across Canada was that, don't leave until you get results. You've given us hope. This was our one and done, thing to push through. We felt compelled by the citizens of Canada to stay there and have an audience with our sitting Prime Minister.
So the trucks were used as representatives of the other members of the public who were demanding, who were worried, who were concerned with the mandates.
Yes.
The trucks become the symbol of resistance to it. So when you're there, you feel you're going there, and the intent was to stay there until you get a solution from the government.
It was.
So how long were you there?
The protests had lasted approximately 3 weeks before Justin Trudeau came to the point of using the Emergencies Act, the War Measures Act, against his own citizens to bust the protest up. We'd said it all along that a conversation would have been perfect, and his intent was to use law enforcement as a weapon and beat, innocent protesters. We had bouncy castles. We had an ice hockey, street hockey game. We had the national anthem. We had prayers on Sundays. We had a stage on the main street. We had unity, we had peace, and we had love in Canada. We woke the world. We shook the ground all across the world, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree you did. I agree you did. What's it like for how? Because we managed to muster up some people to come to a protest for about 2 or 3 hours.
Yep.
How do you muster them to come up to stay somewhere for weeks and weeks? What does that take? What does that look like? Families leaving, driving for days and days. Men, you're leaving your kids for weeks and weeks. How did so many people do that? And what was the atmosphere like? And what were the conditions of living like?
Well, it shows the desperation that Canadians were feeling, I guess, towards COVID vaccine mandates. We heard stories the entire distance across the country. We heard stories from people. One of the biggest ones that hit me was the amount of people that were thinking about committing suicide. The people that felt so desperate in this country that they felt like a lady wrote a letter, and I still have this letter in my possession today, stating that she felt like the government had taken everything away from her, and the only thing she had left for a decision was on how she took her own life. And then the trucks fired up, and it says that in her letter that the trucks saved her life, and we have conversations with people on a daily basis that tell us the same thing, the desperation that they felt, or how close they were to suicide, or the stories of people that lost loved ones to suicide, or the people that lost loved ones in nursing homes, that weren't allowed to see their parents before they passed away. They got to watch them on an iPad. These are the stories that happen in Canada. You talk about the way the people were oppressed. The skating rinks that were shut down, the outdoor facilities were shut down. You weren't allowed to have a funeral, a wedding, any gatherings, but yet you could go to Walmart or Home Depot with 200 people in the store and it wasn't an issue.
And none of it made sense.
None of it. And that's all I think anybody's ever asked was make it make sense, and nobody can say that. I used the bathroom outside in parking lots because no restaurants were open. I remember coming home after about 2 weeks into the pandemic and saying to my wife, I can't do this anymore. I believe I lasted at home for about a week, and then I was back on the road trucking again, eating out of the cab of the truck and not having the facilities at hand that I needed. But when Ottawa happened, it was life again. And I think anybody that took place in the protests in Ottawa felt alive again. They felt rejuvenated. They felt like they weren't alone. And that's why you've seen so many people come to Ottawa to stand and fight for their right to protest. I know many people that would drive and say, I'm just going to go as far as Regina, Saskatchewan, then I'll turn around and I'll go home. And they got to Regina and they said, no, this is something. I'm going to go to Winnipeg. And they would go to Winnipeg. And then 3 weeks later, they were leaving Ottawa.
Sounds great, man. It must have been an amazing feeling to be part of it.
It was the most inspirational thing I think I could ever have gone through in my life. I can say that out of all the people in the protests, that possibly had something to gain, I'd say I probably grew the most. Maturity level probably was, online I was always the guy that was liking to start a little bit of trouble here and there on my social media posts and posting, and then all of a sudden I was elevated to a different status, I guess, and I had children watching what I was posting. So it was very soon into that. I cut the language out of my comments or my
time to grow up.
Yeah,
people are listening.
Time to grow up. People are listening, and
I still struggle with that.
Yeah, you catch me on yeah, same way, but I'll just keep it where it should be now.
So, how does it? Because it was inspirational to people around the world. The entire world was watching Canada.
They were.
Do you know what? Because I can remember in Britain, and I can remember everyone being upset and angry, and when the truckers, and it was the sight of all the trucks as well, the way they look, and the convoys coming down the road. What effect do you think that those actions had on COVID and the pandemic worldwide?
I believe the convoy obliterated the COVID vaccine narrative. I believe it did, and we started watching provinces dropping their mandates. It was within the route of the convoy before we even got to Ottawa. The provinces were starting to wake up. I believe Saskatchewan was the first to fall. Alberta was then. some different places. So we had a direct effect.
I agree. So when did it change? When you were there, what changed with the police? How did it go from peaceful protests to designating you as basically terrorists?
Well, we reached kind of a tentative deal with the city of Ottawa to start moving some of the trucks out of the residential areas. You know, downtown Ottawa doesn't have a lot of people living in it, but there was some people in the downtown core that were affected. And their priority was to try and get those trucks out of the downtown core up onto Wellington, where they could show a bigger, footprint to the Prime Minister. And when that deal was struck, it was immediate that Justin Trudeau didn't want to have that. He wanted us taken out of there. He didn't want to see any movement. He wanted to use everything he could against us. So when that deal was struck with Mayor Watson, we were immediately shut down. And you watched the police that we've been working with for approximately 3 weeks, and they moved back, and a different set of police officers appeared, and a lot more aggressive. You watched the police, even the units that patrolled the streets. We had a constant presence of police there, but they were really compliant. They were on our side. I believe they were on our side. They slowly became replaced with people that they headhunted all across the country. They started a narrative all across the country that we were evil people that were trying to overthrow the government, which we were not. And the government flew them in to basically stomp Canadians on our main street, Wellington, right in front of the Parliament buildings.
Would you say that's what they were brought in to crush you?
They were, yeah, they were.
When their job is actually to facilitate legal and lawful protest.
It was, yeah. We seen billy clubs.
What's billy clubs?
Billy clubs. It was a chunk of 2x4, a chunk of wood, and they didn't even shave the edges off, so they could use those to beat.
Oh, what, the police were picking up bits of wood?
Yeah. Police were using were chunks of wood to beat Canadian protesters on the street in front of our Parliament. They used rubber bullets. They used, I don't think stun grenades, but they used your pepper spray.
And did this just change from one day, everything peaceful for 3 weeks, to just the orders come, crush them?
It was.
Is that when he invoked the Emergency Act?
He invoked the Emergency Act on the 14th of February. Tamara and I were arrested on the 17th of February. I was one of the first ones to be arrested. Tamara was the second. And then after that, Pat King was arrested, and so was
How
Tyson
did the arrest
Thomas.
come? Your arrest? What happened?
Well, I just got a fresh coffee, and I was walking down a quiet street in Ottawa, and one of the streets that I cleared just the day before, we took those trucks off that street and moved them a block up. So it was a quiet street, and I didn't know that we were being surveilled. So when we were alone and away from the protest site, I was approached by 2 officers and immediately had a fresh coffee in my hand. I was arrested, taken into custody. And then spent I was pretty fortunate. I spent 26 hours in police custody before a bail hearing was had. We reached an agreement where I could return home. I had to leave the protest site.
What did they question you on?
There was an intense questioning period. It was just basically on the officers asking why I thought we had so much support behind us. They were concerned about the money that was raised. The Give Send Go. It hit about $10 million before the government had it shut down, and then
So people are donating money to support the truckers.
They were. I mean, we raised more money than what the Liberal government did in first fundraising in Canada. So, the Give Send Go was the second. The GoFundMe campaign was the first, which hit approximately $10 million. Which we had access to very limited funds. I believe we had access to maybe $20,000 before the government had everything frozen. They used the banking system in Canada under an illegal act to have our bank accounts frozen, all the funds that were used. But thanks to the resilience of Canadians, the cash started coming in, and we were doing what we could to keep the trucks in place. We wanted results. We wanted our government to listen to us.
And then you've spent 26 hours in a police station. You've then been bailed and given conditions?
Yeah, I was bailed at $120,000 bail bond.
So you had to pay $120,000?
$120,000. I'm not allowed to speak to Tamara Leach going forward with that. Danny Bulford, which is an RCMP officer, ex-RCMP officer, he's actually a part of the sniper team that was in place to keep parliamentary people safe, who lost his job due to the vaccine mandates, the federal vaccine mandates. And then Pat King. So I've got 3 people on my list of people. I'm not allowed to take part in the protest. Basically not allowed to go back to Ottawa.
You're not allowed to take part in any protest?
No.
So you don't have any democratic right?
No, it was basically go home and shut your mouth and wait for your day in trial. So I was then upgraded from the trial. The charges are then 7 indictable offenses. I was
What's
charged.
indictable mean?
Indictable is basically, murder is an indictable offense.
Prison sentence.
Mischief would be the first count. Mischief is usually a summary offense, so it's usually a slap on the wrist, a fine, probation, something like that. They've upgraded that summary offense to the indictable offense so they can seek greater punishment. I've got 7 indictable offenses on me right now: mischief, counseling to commit mischief, going against a court order. I've got 2 counseling charges on top of that.
What was the court order that you meant to have gone against?
There's an alleged video out there where I said, if the police come and smash your windows on your truck and try and hurt you or take you, grab the air horn and give it a tug and let everybody else know that it's happening. So there's a court order in place that there wasn't to be no honking in the city of Ottawa.
Oh my God, so you told people to honk.
And then the last charge was intimidation of a peace officer with a counseling charge on top of that. So
When was you charged? What date?
February 17th,
What year?
2022.
2022. It's 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. Our trial,
You've been on these conditions for 2.5 years.
2.5 years, yes.
Tell me how, as a businessman and as a father who's gone and legally protested, how you feel about your country at that time, about the Emergency Order Act put in by Justin Trudeau, about the media, the way they're labelling you, and about the state of the Canadian government and the way they're acting.
Well, we've obviously seen the best in Canadians throughout the protests. We've seen so many people come forward and show just how Canada we still were. The government, on the other hand, is the issue, or has been the issue. My credit rating has been destroyed because of this. My bank accounts were frozen for 3.5 months.
So they froze your bank account. So
they
they froze lots of people's bank accounts. We saw this all over the news. You were one of them then.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, and how that was it your account? Was it joint account with your wife?
It was everything. It was corporate accounts. It was my personal bank account. It was a joint account with my wife. So immediately after the weekend, the RCMP issued a letter to my banking facility saying that a mistake had been made and to unfreeze my corporate account and my joint account. However, my personal account remained frozen up and for 3.5 months. I don't know if many people know this, but the citizens of Ottawa has launched a $400 million lawsuit against myself, Tamara Leach and others that took part in the Ottawa protest. They used a plaintiff named Zexi Lee, a downtown resident who is employed by the federal government in Service Canada. We realized that downtown lawyer Paul Champ orchestrated the whole thing, trying to find somebody to be the face of the lawsuit.
So they found someone who stands with the government in that town to then be the face of organising a lawsuit to sue you.
And so she came into the courtroom last year, seeing as our trial started September 5th, 2023. She testified against us for a few days in court, and under that testimony, we under cross-examination, we got it out of her that she had not lost a single dollar in pay, nor a day in work throughout the protest. But we have video of her yelling and screaming at people on the street in Ottawa, and name-calling, and as well as allegedly throwing eggs off building balconies.
So what's she suing you for? And there's a group of you being sued. This is lawfare for 400 million. Did you say?
400 million.
Are you concerned?
I'm not. No, that's a lot of money. I don't necessarily have $400 million.
But you don't see that their goal is just to clear you out?
It is. You know what their goal is to get the money. Any remaining funds that was left over from the Give, Send, Go or the GoFundMe is totaling about $5.5 million, and all that money has been in escrow, seized by the courts since early February when it was raised. And that money's sitting there now, still, money that Canadian taxpayers paid to have some answers out of the federal government. And that lawsuit will continue for a number of years. So I think the goal is to take that money for themselves.
Just to eat the money up, so there's no money left.
Thankfully, we have a lot of help in this country. We have a business, it's a non-profit business called the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, based out of Calgary here, who has been helping us with our legal defense on that, as well as some of my criminal charge cost. Tamara Leach has the Democracy Fund, which is a rebel news organization, basically behind the scenes. So we've got help out there. We've got a lot of help, and we're
so you've had the public support to help you with the finances. Yes. But if you hadn't had the public support, what position would you be in?
Well, that courtroom would be a very lonely place.
Would you still have the fight that you've got now?
I don't think we would. They would have drained us quite some time ago. So we'll just keep going, and that's what our goal is to keep going. But there's a lot of other truck drivers and protesters throughout Ottawa that are still facing legal fights right now. So the goal of Tamara and I has been to go out and try and fundraise for some of these people or get them the help that they need. Unfortunately, I think there's just over 200 people that were arrested in Ottawa at the protest and charged. So finding those people, if they've already made their way through the courts, if they've taken a plea deal per se, getting them in charge or in touch with somebody that could financially help them is the big
So
thing.
you're trying to help. So out of the 200, they arrested hundreds.
They
You're
did,
trying to find them to make sure they've got the legal support and the moral support to back them.
for sure.
So you're 2.5 years in, you've had all these conditions, you're not allowed to protest. So in a country that's meant to be one of the most democratic countries in the world, you've got no rights right now.
I don't have any rights, and the funny thing is Tamara and I's conditions have been in place since February of 2022. We asked the Crown prosecutor quietly behind the scenes if they would remove the conditions between Tamara and I so we could actually have a conversation together, seeing as the Crown had rested their case against us and defense had rested their case. We're waiting for final submissions right now to be held in another month or two before we can actually end the trial. But the answer from the Crown's office was a resounding no. They wanted the conditions to remain in place. So what we did with them was we filed a motion with the judge in our case to actually have her make the decision whether she would allow us to have contact. And thankfully, she looked at the evidence in hand and decided there was no reason why we couldn't have a conversation. So she really removed those.
Well, I guess the conditions prove exactly what all this has been about.
It's about silencing the opposition to the federal government, I believe. So.
What do you think the future looks like for Canada?
Well, I see the power of the people. I see the people that are still involved, and I see, the government keeps pushing more and more and taking away more and more freedoms from the citizens. And there's probably 40% of Canadians are still fast asleep right now, maybe if not a little more. And when something finally happens to affect those 40%, you're going to see a little bit of change happen.
You currently face prison?
10 years in federal prison is what the Crown prosecutor is asking for right now.
Current prosecutors asked for 10 years because you wanted a few people to bib their horn and park their trucks in the city centre.
Yes.
How does that compare to the way the government are dealing with, say, open border immigration and criminals that are coming into the country or migrants that are committing crimes?
I think my counterpart Tamara summed it up best here a little while ago when she said 125 cases in the court system right now in the Ontario area had been thrown out due to what they call a charter application for not enough time to try them properly. So those cases have been thrown out because they've been so intent on focused on convoy people and punishing them in the courts. Some of the offenses there were rape and armed robbery, burglary.
And they've thrown all of them
and
out.
they've thrown them out to just
because they're concentrating on the convoy.
Yes. We have a man.
Message, what's the purpose of such intense prosecutions against what is just ordinary working Canadian men?
Silence. I think they just want us quiet. They don't want us speaking. It was a time in Canada, in Canadian history, that scared the living daylights out of the federal government. They've seen so many people rise up and felt oppressed so badly that it was time for them to have a voice and speak out against the mandates. So when that many people, showed up on the doorstep of the federal government to have a conversation, you've seen when the trucks were rolling into Ottawa on January 29th, you then see every province around in Canada light up with protests that went to their local legislative grounds. So we had just over 1,000 trucks show up in Regina, Saskatchewan, at the Saskatchewan legislative grounds. You've seen that all across the country. We've seen that from Victoria, British Columbia, all the way across. It was a complete unity across Canada. It seemed like
it's a mini revolution.
It was. And the government did everything in their power to silence that.
To keep it from the public's eyes or the world's eyes, or to slander it and demonise it in whatever way they can.
They pulled a Nazi flag out of wherever they found it, and they flew that on our nation's Capitol Hill and tried to make it look like it was one of the convoy people and tried to slander us, try to make us look mean.
Am I right? Can I just confirm that where the Nazi flag was actually in an area that only the police could get to?
Absolutely.
I remember this. Do you know why? Because I've led organisations, I've led demonstrations, I've seen these tactics time and time again. So whenever you see a Nazi flag flying, it's like they're waiting to take the photo.
It was. You actually seen the folds in the Nazi flag on the still photos, And media, they want to see a rolling shot, they need a live shot. These were still photos. They came out of the hotel called the Chateau Laurier, which is on the east side of downtown Ottawa beside the Parliament buildings. They came out of a side door in that where the law enforcement was primarily staying. They walked around the grounds in a quiet part of where the protest site where not a lot of protesters were. The only way you could get to the spot where they actually were was through a locked gate that the police only had the keys to get through. So it was a stage setup. They flew a Nazi flag on our solemn Parliament grounds in Canada to try and make citizens look in a bad light.
To try and turn it against you and get the public to stop their support of the movement.
They did a lot of that stuff. We have a proud statue of our Canadian hero Terry Fox, which is, Terry was a runner back in the 80s who had lost his leg to cancer, and he was walking across Canada. He made it in through Ontario before he succumbed to cancer and passed on. Terry Fox is a Canadian legend, and they used him when somebody from the protest site draped a Canadian flag across his shoulders and put a Mandate Freedom sign in his arms. They tried to demonize us, saying that we desecrated the Terry Fox statue. I mean, Rodney Palmer, one of our beloved journalists in this country, said, what person in Canada wouldn't hate these guys if they were tried to portray them in the light? But, any other organization that comes to Ottawa on protest usually hangs their flag on, I've seen the Palestinian flag on Terry Fox, and the media has been silent.
Tell me, you travel the country in Big Red.
I do.
Tell me the reaction you receive.
It's pretty impressive. We get noticed wherever we go. So a lot of people will go by, horns honking, waving. A lot of people will stop on the side of the road to film us or photograph us. It's something. You can't usually go a few miles without somebody honking your horn. And when you stop, people come up to you. It's pretty humbling to know that there's a lot of support out there.
Have you faced any violent opposition, any death threats? Has there been any targeting of you or your family? Has there been any groups, anything like that?
There hasn't been, no. No, I've been very lucky. My social media haters are all usually trolls online.
And you're a big guy.
I'm a big guy, yeah. Yeah, the Tamara and I finally have her voice back again. It's been awesome traveling the country with her.
Tell me what you've been doing. You're with I spoke to Tamara earlier. You're traveling Canada again now.
We are.
What are you doing?
Well, we're focusing a lot on the truckers and trying to get some guys some help getting through their legal fees, because there's still a lot of guys that are still facing trial even 2.5 years later. The other focus that we're starting to work on right now is the vaccine injured. We've spoke with so many people across Canada with vaccine injuries, and some of them are fairly devastating, neurological, and left them in wheelchairs. We've got a girl in Ontario right now, Kayla Pollock, who is a quadriplegic now because she took a vaccine. We met one in Ashley. We met her in Ottawa a few weeks ago. That she's got 2 twin-year-old, 6-year-old daughters. She's got to be in her mid-20s herself, and she is with 2 canes now and can barely speak. And that's from one shot.
And they're still pushing these shots.
With one shot in her and the side effects were that bad, they asked her to get her second shot. And when she said, "I'm vaccine injured from my first shot, do you seriously suggest this?" And their response was, "We'll do the injection in the emergency room in case you have another bad reaction." Medical professionals in this country aren't listening to these people. They're telling them that it's all in their head. Here's some depression medication. And there's a lot of people out there right now, and they're in a lot of hurt right now because of these vaccines. We're seeing all over the country, over the world right now, Pfizer, Moderna, Moderna pulling their stuff off shelves. Pfizer's now entering into a bunch of lawsuits throughout the United States. And medical people in this country primarily aren't listening to them.
Where do you think it leads? Do you think the truth gets out there about that? Do you think it's all the governments were in on it?
Yeah, I don't think you can suppress the truth much longer. I see the truth is coming forward. We just had a by-election in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, and the Liberal Party of Canada lost to a Conservative.
And that's right in the heart of Liberal land. That something's happened.
That's embarrassment on the Liberal Party of Canada. We're seeing that more and more.
He should forfeit his position.
He should.
He should have after that election result.
We're good friends with one of the last remaining signatures of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Mr. Honourable Brian Peckford, and Brian tells us stories about when a sitting prime minister or a politician is found of an ethics violation, that person in politics should be removed, should resign and move on. Justin Trudeau's on his fifth ethics violation.
But they get away with it. Look what they've got away with.
They've got away with a lot.
It's not just in Canada. Look what the British government. You speak about fear earlier. All the messages come out. The WhatsApp messages. We'll just scare the shit out of the public. That's how they were having their discussions with the new variant. We'll just terrify them. But that's all come out. No one's facing prosecution. Not in Britain, not in Canada, not in America. All the lies, all the medical problems, all the injuries. Still, I just ask myself if it ever will.
I think what we're hearing too right now from a lot of people all across the country is we want accountability. We want accountability from the sitting politicians who were in place to put all these mandates in place. They made them. Yes, they did. And they still haven't acknowledged that there was wrongdoing. And until they get to the point where they can acknowledge and accept some of the responsibility, I don't think people are going to rest.
So when are you in court?
Tamara and I go back on August 13th. I guess we found out a few days ago that we have 4 days in August. We were going to do verbal submissions for the final of our trial. The judge has now asked for written, so that will save quite a bit of court time. So 4 days of trial left, and then we are essentially done until a verdict is read. So we'll go forward praying that it's a good verdict.
Years.
That could be up to 6 months, I believe. So we could have a verdict by early 2025.
So that would have took 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years
for mischief.
And basically, we'll be bouncing off $1 million in court fees by that time.
$1 million in court fees, whilst they drop all the rape charges or robbery charges,
right,
and pursue the legal citizens who are daring to challenge their narrative.
We need more people to stand up in this country. Well, actually, all across the world, people have to quit being scared to stand up. We hear this on a regular basis. I've had people come up to me and say, I would have totally come to Ottawa and stood with you, but I have a mortgage and kids. My response, I have a mortgage and kids too.
I was going to end that on this. You've stood up. You're a businessman. You're a father. You've risked it all. You're still standing up.
And I'll continue to stand.
What advice would you give to people watching this? Remember, there's a lot of people. You know what? I always say when it turns, it's going to turn so quick and so fast. There's a hell of a lot of people out there who feel oppressed and silenced and feel forced into silence for the same reasons: job, mortgages, families.
Yes.
Yeah. What advice would you have to them in the current state of play?
Stand up. In Canada here we have a parliamentary system that's easy to access. $5, I believe, $10 for a party membership. You can get actively involved with your political parties. If more people did that, it's a thankless job, honestly, from city council to your school council, rural municipalities in Canada especially. Get involved with your local politics and change things from within. The politicians are not going to get us out of this right now. They're the reason why we're in this in the first place. So if anybody's active out there, it's time to stand and take part in the system. So
because the majority of the British public don't vote or don't get involved in politics. So you'd be advising anyone and everyone to get involved or stop moaning.
Yeah, stop moaning. If you get involved, you can't. You can't sit back and watch this. Sitting back and watching this has put us in the position that we're in right now.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. It's been
appreciate it, Tommy.
It's been interesting listening, and I wish you luck in court, and I'll make sure we're certainly following your verdict.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Cheers. If you've enjoyed this story, where can people follow you?
I'm on social media, Big Red. Usually Big Red 1975 is my TikTok handle. Twitter, it's Chris Barber 1975, and there's a website out there with Big Red. BigRedMerch.ca.
If you get off with a case, will we see Big Red back on the street?
You will. No, Big Red's out there working every day.
Will we see it in a protest format?
Well, we'll see about that.
We'll wait to the verdict.
Thanks, Tom.
Cool. Thanks for your time.
Take care,
Cheers
my friend.
again. Thank you. Carry on watching for more interesting guests. I'll talk to anyone. I'll debate anyone. I'll hear anyone's story. If you want to help me along that way, it's not free. I need your support. If you can support my family, that gives me my peace of mind. It means I can continue to do the work I do. I appreciate every bit of support, as do my children. It gives me the ability to fly them out here to see me so I can stay in constant contact with them. I'm deplatformed and I'm censored, so I need you. I need you to share this content and make sure you stay tuned for upcoming weekly guests, interesting guests, exciting guests. I'm Tom Robson, and this has been my podcast, Silenced.